Hey guys, welcome to another video. Previously we worked on the if and else statement. So today we're going to work on practice problems for the if and else statements. So we'll just jump right into it. We'll get into the material and hopefully by the end of this video you guys have a good understanding of the if else statement and will be able to implement it in your coding. So the first question, it's saying to write a C program to find the maximum between two numbers using if and else. So it needs an input of two numbers from the user and it's going to automatically generate the maximum number using the if else statement. So we're going to have two inputs. We're going to print out input num1 and you're going to input this number or the user's going to input it. Then we're going to ask again, but for a second number, and it's going to be a second number, and now we're going to print out the maximum number, and it's going to be found using the if else statement. So you guys take a crack at it right now and come back when you're ready. Alright, so I'll just get started on this. Alright, so we're going to include our directives. I think, yeah, include sorry about that, studio.h int main. Alright, so what we want to do is, since we're inputting two different numbers, I want to declare two numbers. That's what I want to do. I want to int A and int B. So those are our two declarations. So I'm going to prompt the first statement using the printf function, input num1. And then I'm going to ask for input using the scanf function %d. And this one we're going to store an A, so the address operator with A. Same thing for the second one. So we're going to prompt the question with input num2. And we're going to scan that in. Remember, these are integers, so %d. And we're going to ampersand the address operator B. Now, this is where we use our if-else statement. So the question is, we can either say if B is larger than A or if A is larger than B. I'm just asking the question if A, lowercase since that's our variable. So A, if it's greater than B, remember our relational operators. If A is greater than B, then we want to print that it's maximum equals the value of whatever A is. So we'll have the %A and declare it right there. So what this is saying, if A is larger than B, then it's going to print out maximum equals %d, which is A. So it's going to print out maximum equals the value of A. But if it isn't, if B, else, remember you don't need a declaration. You don't need an expression here, because if this is wrong, it's just going to default to the else statement. So what this pretty much saying is, I'm going to comment this because it's inherently there. It's saying if B is larger than A. I'll just write that right here. It says not actually here. We'll print out that maximum equals %t. There you go, and that's the else statement. So it's saying if A is larger than B, then it's going to print out the maximum equals the value of A. But if it's not, it's going to print out the maximum is the value of B. And this is not here. It's just inherently saying it. If this is a 1, it'll print this. By 1, I mean true. If it's a 0, if it's false, it'll print this. You can flip it the other way if you want. You can have B larger than A and then flip these. It's just the way you write your code which determines what's in the if and else statements. And you'll return 0. And let's run that. Alright, let's say it's 10, 20, maximum is 20. Let's do a different set of numbers. Let's say this is 35 and this is 99. Maximum is 99. It's finding the maximum number. So, for example, let's say we use these numbers 35 and 99. So the value of A is 35 and the value of 99 is B. So let's say 35 is greater than B. That's false. It's a 0. So it would skip over this. It would not execute these statements. And it would go into its else statement and execute this statement. And it's saying to print out maximum is the value of B. So yeah, that's a very, very simplified if-else statement. So let's move on to the next question. So the second question is saying, write a C program that checks positive, negative, or 0. So it's asking you to input a value, input any value, and it's asking the program to check if it's positive, negative, or 0. So here's an example. If you input a number, let's say that input number that the user puts is 23. It's going to print out 23 is positive. If it's negative 23, then 23 is negative. And let's say if it's 0. If it's 0, just say input number is 0. So that's the program. I'll give you a tip here. You can either use only if statements or you can use a set of nested if statements, if else statements. Alright, so take a second to look over the program and actually try to do it. It would help you build up your just your coding practice. So go ahead and try it. Alright, so I'll get right into it. So let me comment this out over here. Alright, so we're gonna do the include. The studio.h int main. Alright, so let's look at it. It's asking us to use one number. So we're going to use one number. Let's just call it A. And the question is input a number. The statement input a number. So we're going to print that out. I'm going to say input a number. Oh, yes. Input number. I apologize about that. Input number. Semicolon and a space to give space in there. So we're going to scan this number in because this is going to be our input and we're going to store it in A. So %d address operator A. So I will show you two different ways how to do it. This first way, I am only going to use if statements. There's going to be no else statements in here. So if an if statement is true, it would print out the body of whatever it's asking to do. If it's false, it's going to skip over that if statement. You don't necessarily need to have an else statement accompanying being with it. So I'll give you an example right here. So if A is equal to 0. Remember, as we went over last episode, this is an equality operator. This is pretty much comparing the values to see if they are true. It's not assigning A to be 0. It's saying, is A equal to 0? If it's not, it would be false. It'd come up with a 0. If it's true, it would have a value of 1 and actually go inside the if statement and execute it. So, what do I want the compiler to execute if A is equal to 0? What I want them to execute is the input number is 0. So we're going to have a printf statement in here that says input number is 0. And that covers if it's if A is 0. So for the next one, I want to cover. There's no else statement, by the way. So if this is completely wrong, compiler's going to completely skip over it and not look at it again. So let's say A is less than 0. So this is testing if A is negative. This is testing if A is 0. This is testing if A is negative. So what do we want to print out? For example, let's say negative 23. Then we want to say negative 23 is negative. Negative. So, what I want to do is going to have that value there. I want to show that value because in the program, when we're writing this program, we don't know what the value the user's going to input. So we have to code it into our printf statement because we can't just put some value. We have to have the exact value. So that %d is going to cover this, the negative 23, if they input negative 23. And then we're going to say is negative. Alright. And then we're going to have A at the end. So whatever the value of A is going to print it out. And it's going to be exactly the same for positive, except we're switching the relational operator. So here we're saying if A is greater than 0, then we're going to print out %d is positive. Alright. And it's A. And then we have a return 0. And let's run that. I believe I didn't make any mistakes, but let's run that. Did I press the right one? Alright, let's input 23. 23 is positive. Let's input negative 23. Negative 23 is obviously negative. Let's put in 0. Input number is 0. So, let's look at it real quick. Let's just look at the logic behind it. Let's say 77. 77 is positive, right? So here we input 77. We go down into this if statement right here. Is A equal to 0? What the compiler will look at it is that if is 0, if is false. So because this is not true, it would not execute this. It would skip over. So now it would come to here. Is 77 less than 0? False again. It would skip over this and it would print out. It would skip over this completely and go to the next if statement. It would be this one. Is 77 greater than 0? Yes. So it would actually print out this statement. It would only print out this statement because it's the only one true. There would be no way that this can be true, this can be true, and this can be true. Only the one that matches up is true. And just one point I want to make. Do not make this mistake of using only one. What this is doing, it's an assignment equal sign. It's not an equality equal sign. For equality, you need 2. It's just comparing the value of A to 0. This pretty much in C is assigning 0 to A. So if I were to do this, let's actually do that. So look at it. I put in 77 again. Input number is 0. You know why? Because I am assigning A equals 0 right under that scanf function. So it's overriding that number. A does not equal 77 anymore. A equals 0. And because this single equal sign is assigning A 0. So any number that you put, it does not matter what number that you put, it would always print out the same thing. Input number is 0. So that's what I just wanted to get through. That there's a difference between equality and assignment. Just make sure that, especially in these if statements, you need to use these double bracket, these double equal sign. So let's get rid of that. What I want to do is show you the nested statement version. So you can start this whichever way you want. I'm gonna start it with is if A is less than 0, oops, let me do that. I really like to have these neat because it's much easier to read. And if you have all these brackets on different sides and not lined up with the if and else statements, it gets really hard to read. And you'll see in a second when we have all our if nested statements. So if A is smaller than 0, it's going to be like the same before. %D is negative. And then we're going to have A at the end. But it's different. We're using if and else statements. So we're going to have else. Because if this is not true, I need it to go in here. But you can have these double if and else statements. There's ways that you can write else if, but I'm not a big fan of that. It's just I prefer to read it this way. So now I want to test for another case. So let's say if A is equal to 0, then I'm going to print out input number is 0. And remember, if I can have its own accompanying statement, if both of these are false, then it's going to automatically go to this else statement. So that's where I can have my last case, that %D is positive. So let's see what it looks like. I believe I did correctly. Let's say 23 is positive. Negative 23 is negative. And 0, input number is 0. So let's look at it. Let's dissect it. So let's put a number here. Let's do 77 just like we did before. 77. So if A is 77, it would come here. It would test, is 77 less than 0? No, that's not true. So it would go to its corresponding corresponding else statement. So you see how I have these lined up? This is very much easier to tell how to tell which is its corresponding if and else. So if corresponds to this else statement. This one though corresponds to this one. If I had another one, it'd be down this line. If I had another, it'd be down this line. This is why you need to have proper indentation to the corresponding if and else statements, or it gets really, really, really messy. So just going back to the program. So if it's 77, this is wrong, so it goes to its else statement. Right? So It's going to skip over this. It's going to skip over all this and go into this else statement. But we have another if and else statement, right? So it's going to test, is 77 equals to 0? Again, it's false. It will skip over this and go to its corresponding else statement. And in this else statement, it's just asking to print something out, which is the last case. The last case if it's positive. But what if it was negative? What if it was the first one? What if it was negative 77? If it's negative 77, negative 77 smaller than 0, it's true, right? It would print out the statements of the if statement and completely ignore the else statement. This else statement corresponds to all of this, so it would completely ignore all of this. It's like if the compiler just skipped it. So it would print this out, skip it out, program done. If it's 0, it would see that this is false, go into the else statement, and the first if statement is correct. And after that, it prints this out, ignores its else statement, and it leaves. So that's why you need to learn the proper way the if and else statement works and how it navigates throughout the compiler. So I think I did enough on that question. So let's look into remainders real quick, because the last program is remainders. So I've known you guys seen the remainder operator. The remainder operator is this percent sign, but in a different way. So you know how 12 divide 2 equals 6, right? But 12 remainder 2 equals 0. What's happening is dividing, and if there's a remaining number, it would show that number. So when you divide 12 2 by 12 or 12 by 2, there's going to be no remaining values. But what if you did 12 remainder 5? 5 goes into to 12 only 2 times. So it's going to be 5 and 10. But there's going to be 2 remaining numbers, because it's 12. I can actually just show you guys right here. So it'd be 12 remainder 5. Let me comment this out. So 12 remainder 5. 5 goes into it 2 times, but it's only 10, right? But there's 12. So there's going to be this remaining value. And you'll see right here, A is 2. But let's say A was, the first value is 13. What's the remainder of that? So still, 5 only goes into it 2 times, and then there's going to be 3 remaining value. So A is 3. Let's say we do something a little bit more harder, maybe like 47 and 9. What's the remaining value of that? So A is 2. Let's say we remain it by 5. There's going to be 2 remainder as well, because this would go into 45, and then there still be 2 numbers left. A is 2. Or let's say, and by the way, if it exactly goes into A, into whichever the first number is, it's going to be 0, because there's no remaining values. It's like 10 and 5. It's going to be 0 because 5 goes exactly into 10. So here, we'll go. I just compile it. There you go, A is 0. 15, same thing. It's going to be the same thing. But let's say it's 11. the remainder will be 1 because 5 goes into 10 perfectly, but there's still one remaining value. And there you go. That's what the remainder operator does. It's not very difficult. It's you just divide it, and if it's not perfect, it's gonna have some value, whatever it is. If, for example, if it's you're doing 4 remainder operator by 2, if you're doing 4 remainder operator by 2, this would be 0 because 2 goes perfectly into 4. But if you're doing it by 5, the remainder operator is going to be 1 because 2 does not go into 5 properly. So with that new knowledge that we have, let's write this new program that we have. So this last question is asking us to write a C program to check whether a number is even or odd using the if-else statement. How to check whether a number is even or odd is what we're going to do. So this is a program example. We're going to input a number. The user's going to input a number, whatever number it is, and it's going to print out this output right here. The number that was put and is an even number or is an odd number, depending what they put. So if it's 11, they're going to put odd. So here's the tip. Use the remainder operator to figure out if there are remaining values, and you're going to use this inside the if statement parentheses, just like we use relational operators for equality, greater than, less than. We can use this remainder operator, but at the same time we need to use the equality operator to say if it's to 0 or to 1. I know you guys are thinking this, it's a little difficult. You can also use division, but just try to rack your brain to see how you can work this. And you can use the remainder operator and relational operators. That's all I'm going to say. So definitely try to work this out and we'll get this done. Alright, so just pause the video and go ahead. Alright, so let's get started on this program. Let me comment this out. Alright, so same thing as always. We're going to include studio.h. Alright, so it's asking us to input a number. So I'm just going to declare a number. We're going to use the printf statement to say, to input a number. And now we're going to scan that number in with A. That's my variable declaration. So now this is what I wanted you to do. So if this is even or odd, so it pretty much decided on the value 2. So if a remainder 2 equals 0. So what we're saying here, let's say the value of a is 4. If the just like we talked about it right over here, or even let's say just like we said over here, if it's 4 remainder 2, it would equal 0 because it goes perfectly into it. So whatever value this is, if it goes perfectly into this value, it will equal 0 because the remainder will equal 0. So if it's 4, if this value, let's say we replace it with a, if a is 4, 2 goes perfectly into 4 and there will be no remaining values, and this equals 0, but this is equal to 0 here, so it's true. So if A is an even number, this statement is true. So what we want to do is to print out what the program is asking us to do, which is %d is an even number. And for the other one, it's just an else statement, because if this is not true, then there's only one or two things. Except for 0, it's a different case. But we're not really worried about that one right now. So, if this is true, it would print this out, right? But if it's not true, it would just default into the else statement. It would print out whatever the else says. The else says is, if this is true, print this out. If this is false, it'll print this out. So, if this is not true, then it has to be an odd number. So %d is an odd number. Alright, return 0. Let's try to see if everything's correct. 2. Oh, I completely forgot to put them inside. So A, I apologize about that. A. Alright. 2 is an even number. 10 is an even number. And 15 is an odd number. Let's just go through it. Why is this true and why is this false? So, input the number 15. So at this point, A is 15. So, is pretty much it's saying it's 15 remainder 2. So, is 2 perfectly divisible into 15? No. 14 is perfectly divisible into 2. 2 is perfectly divisible into 14, and that would equal 0. But if it was 15, the remainder value would be 1. So if it's 15, a remainder 2, value is 1, and we're equaling that to 0. But that is not a true statement. So this is not expressed, is not run. So the compiler would completely skip over this if statement and go into the else statement and just print this out. And let's say we do 14. 14. So A is 14. It's perfectly divisible by 2. So it would be 0 equals to 0. So this is a true statement and would print out this right here. So I hope you guys got some good practice from this video, and you guys need to keep working on your coding skills. Definitely go online, look at some questions. If you have textbooks, try these exercises to help your mind get used to this coding environment and the syntax and how to get those coding muscles back. Well, I hope to see you guys in the next video, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. Anything would be appreciated. Thank you so much, guys.